So good morning, everybody. I'm sorry for not giving you a heads up at the end of last week. Shabbos is Yom Tov still, so there's not a regular Parsha Shavuoth this week. So I'm looking at the background. So either we're going to learn Psukim about CVS pharmacy, or we're going to learn Psukim about the giving of the Torah. So we're going to go for the latter, and that is in the book of Shmos. We're going to do the laning of the first day of Shavuos. That's the very famous scene of the giving of the Torah, and obviously that more than anything else is what the holiday of Shavuos is about. It's the book of Shmos, Exodus, chapter 19, verse 1. That's where we're going to begin from, chapter 19, verse 1. But I apologize if anybody would have, Mitzvah Shem will do that for the week, God willing. I apologize if anybody would have liked to have known beforehand. Okay, so let's start, chapter 19, verse 1. B'chodesh hashlishi, L'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, the third month after the Jewish people leaving Egypt, which is the month of Sivan, the month that we're currently in. Bayom hazeh, on this day, bo midbar Sinai. On this day, Rashi says it's Rosh Chodesh. So just to give you a sense, just to lay it out in the way of the days of we have now, it was the equivalent of yesterday. Now, Shavuos is on Friday, Thursday night, Friday, the equivalent of yesterday, Sunday, Rosh Chodesh, the Jewish people came to Har Sinai. Verse 2, Vayisu Refidim, they traveled from Refidim, Vayavo Midbar Sinai, and they came to the desert of Sinai. Now, let's just pause for a moment. The sequence here is very strange, or it's jumping out in some way, right? We just said they came to the desert of Sinai. Now we say again in verse 2, they came to the desert of Sinai. All of a sudden we say where they came from. So we probably could have figured out where they came from. So why did it have to say where they came from? And to whatever extent it had to say where they came from, why did it wait until the second pasuk to say where they came from? The other thing that's interesting is it seems to be the normal mode in the Torah is that it says what they did before it gives the date. So the normal way the Torah would have related it would be the Jewish people came to the Sinai desert in the third month. And instead, it's in the third month the Jewish people came to the Sinai desert. So there's a lot of things jumping out here. Vayachanu b'midbar. So here it is. It's Rosh Chodesh Sivan. They camp in the desert. I mean, I guess they camped in the desert. Obviously, they camped in the desert because they came to the desert. So if it's important to say that they camped, why do you have to say they camped in the desert? You know what I mean? That's also, we already said they came to the Sinai desert. Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Har. And the Jewish people camped there opposite the mountain. This is the second camping verb. This is the second camping verb in 3 words. Okay, which definitely jumps out at you. And the first time it's in the plural, and the second time it's in the singular. So there's a lot going on here. And by the way, it says the Jewish people camped there opposite the mountain. What mountain? Which mountain? We didn't talk about a mountain. Generally speaking, is there only one mountain in the Sinai desert? There's no other mountain. So there's a lot. And I want to be clear, it's using what's called hey idea, the I don't know what the right term for it is in English, but the indicative hey. In other words, the mountain that we've spoken about before. Where have we spoken about a mountain? Okay, so there's a lot to talk about here. Let's start with Rashi. First Rashi on Pasuk Beis. Vayisu Refidim. Lama hutzrach lachsor ulefaresh mehechan nasu. Why does the Torah have the need to revisit where they came from? It says earlier that the Jewish people were camped in Refidim. Obviously, that's where they came from. So why does it need to say that that's where they came from? They came from Refidim. El hakish nisiyasan merefidim l'biyasan l'midbar Sinai. Torah is trying to bridge their departure from Refidim to their arrival at the Sinai desert. Ma biyasan l'midbar Sinai b'tshuva av nisiyasan merefidim b'tshuva. So the idea is that they had a spirit of repentance in both contexts. Okay. Next Rashi, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, the Jewish people camped there. Really, really famous Rashi. I'm sure many of you know it. Ki ish echad b'lev echad. As one person with one heart. Where that's coming from is because it's in the singular. The Jewish people in the singular camped opposite the mountain, so they camped as one. Avashar kol achanios bitarumos uvim achlokes. All of the other campings are with discord and tension, and that just unfortunately is just the name of the game. Unfortunately, okay. Very well. Let's see the Ramban. Ramban, in some of your Chumashim, it might be listed as Pasuk Aleph, and some of them it might be listed as Pasuk Beis, but it's the Ramban beginning with Bachodesh HaShlishi. Hayaroi Shiyomer HaKasov, Vayisu Merfitim, Vayachnu B'Ambar Sinai, Bachodesh HaShlishi. It says Bnei Yisrael, Be'eretz Mitzrayim. The Ramban says the Pasuk should have been totally different. Like these two psukim together, it should have just said they traveled from Refidim, they camped at Midbar Sinai in the third month after the Jewish people left Egypt. As we point out when we looked at the psukim, the sequence of things seems off. The number of times it talks about where they're coming and where they're coming, it just seems strange. Aval, ba'avur hayos b'yasam Midbar Sinai, simcha lahem v'yamtiv. They had a tremendous feeling of happiness when they came to the Sinai desert. Umeyest seisam Mitzrayim nichsafim elav. When they left Egypt, from the time that they left Egypt, they were clamoring for the opportunity to go to Har Sinai. Ki yadu shesham yikablu es Torah. They weren't just going wandering the desert; they were going with a mission. They knew they were supposed to receive the Torah there. Ki Moshe higid lohem ma shenemar lo tavdunas ve'elokim al ha'arazeh. When God first reveals himself to Moshe with the burning bush, God says to Moshe, the Jewish people will serve God on this mountain. And that's understood as being a reference to the giving of the Torah. So when Moshe introduced himself to the Jewish people and told them about his mission, he told them, I'm not just taking you to the desert, we're going to accept the Torah. So they knew all about it. So when they're leaving, this is very exciting. This is the moment they've been waiting for. V'gam leparo amar, at the beginning, there's a lot of discussion about this, but Moshe Rabbeinu said to Paro, we want to go into the desert and bring offerings to our God for 3 days. What's going on in the desert? This is what it's about. We want to accept the Torah. It's a 3-day trip. So now the Torah says that in the month of Sivan, on the day that the month began, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, they came. Says the Ramban, the Torah doesn't want to treat this arrival like any other departure or arrival. There's a standard format for departures and arrivals in the desert. If you think, and when the Jewish people are going, if you think about Parshas Maseh, where it goes through all those travels, they traveled from here, they came to there. They traveled from here, they came to there. The point, says the Ramban, is this wasn't a regular trip for them. This was the moment. So this was the moment they had been waiting for. So here it is, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, they finally get there. Then the next pasuk is, okay, let's go back to normal itinerary mode. This is where they came from. This is where they got to. It should have said, the normal format would be, they traveled from Refidim and they camped in the desert. That's the normal way the Torah describes these things. Instead, it says, they came to the Sinai desert, Lomar, Kimiyad Shabo al Midbar Sinai, Chanu Bamidbar, Birosam Ahar Mineged. What this teaches is that immediately when they came to the desert, they camped immediately when they saw the mountain. Because again, it was all about the mountain. So the moment they got there, they camped. They didn't say, well, let's keep on going until we find a good stopping point. No. The moment they saw the mountain, they pitched camp. They found this area before the mountain. V'zetam vayachanu b'midbar. They camped in the desert. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged ahar. And the Jewish people camped there opposite the mountain, meaning they camped pretty quickly, and their camping was all about camping opposite the mountain. Okay. If you don't mind, I'd just like to look at the psukim again to just understand them according to the Ramban. So verse 1, and it was in the 3rd month from when the Jews left Egypt. So thinking about the Ramban, the point is they've been waiting for this since the day they left Egypt. And finally, by Yom HaZeh, finally they had come, they came to the Sinai desert. This was the great anticipated thing. Now we get back to the normal mode. It should say, they traveled from freedom and they camped in the desert. That middle phrase of they came to the Sinai desert is extraneous and it's out of the normal format. The Ramban says the point is that it's not just like they went until wherever they went and then they camped. The moment they got to the Sinai desert, they said, okay, we are where we need to be. We're going to camp right away. But that's emphasized through that additional phrase in the middle. And then where did they camp? They didn't just camp anywhere in the desert. They camped because they knew that this mountain was going to be where the big things happened. Going on in the Ramban, this is a really interesting question. The Ramban does not say it authoritatively. The Ramban says it's possible. People ask about this a lot. To what extent was the Erev Rav, was the mixed multitude from Egypt, accepted within the group? I want to be very clear. We have an idea of conversion. We absolutely believe in accepting converts. But these people kind of just came along. Did they fully buy in? Did they not fully buy in? Wasn't exactly clear. And of course, we know with this whole famous story with the golden calf that they really didn't buy in, when it came to the golden calf. According to many, the golden calf was their idea. So the Ramban says it's possible that they were not welcomed at Har Sinai with everybody else. In other words, they were sort of like a little further back, because God never said he's giving the Erev Rav the Torah. I mean, this is a gift from God. Right? This is not like a national program. This is a gift from God to whom? To the Jewish people. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. But I can't emphasize enough, this is not a question of how do we treat people not born into Judaism today. Because we have a Torah, and because you're only part of Klal Yisrael, if you accept the Torah, if people accept the Torah, we accept them fully. Absolutely. But this Erev Rav, it's a little bit of a fuzzy situation. Kili Yisrael Yitena Torah. God is giving the Torah to the Jewish people. K'moshe Amar Kosomar Leves Yaakov V'Sagei Lefnei Yisrael. V'Zetam Vayichan Sham Yisrael. Very interesting pshat. The Ramban is not going with Rashi's thing about as one person with one heart. The Ramban says the Jewish people camped opposite the mountain. You know what that means? That means the Erev Rav wasn't welcome opposite the mountain. So everybody camped in the desert. But right by the mountain was just Klal Yisrael. Or it's just a way of just showing the prominence that they were enjoying by accepting the Torah. So I'm sorry it took me so long to get through this Ramban, but I think it's a very interesting, I think it gives a little more of a perspective on what's going on for the Jewish people as they get to Sinai. It's definitely an interesting shot in the Psukim.